So after doing that video about Ukraine, and I've said before, sometimes foreign politics can be a bit of a downer. But again, I am very optimistic about the situation in Ukraine. But I need to level myself up a bit, I think, after that. And of course, giving away what we're going to be talking about. Of course, if you are up in the north at the moment, billboards, digital stuff, even adverts on Facebook that I've seen on this proclaiming the greatness of leveling up. The leveling up is here. That it's been here. Look at this random picture of your city with these questionable almost locations that leveling up is here, leveling up is here. But it would be like me showing a panoramic view of Barnsley and just putting a dot there saying leveling up is here. It's not really happened. And I think this is going to be one of the, hilarious moments of the next general election, because remember the 2019 general election and the whole election of the Conservatives, and of course many of those red wall Conservatives banking on the fact that they were going to get re-elected on the promises of this leveling up, doing their entire for the past 4 years has been leveling up is coming. It's coming, guys. Honestly, it's nearly here. It's nearly here. They've got nothing to show for it. This is why there is, I think, a potential for a red wall MP rebellion. I really do. That's why I think Anderson going has caused, I think, a lot of problems. The talk, of course, bringing back Boris Johnson to do a red wall tour. Yeah, I'm sure those MPs are thanking Rishi Sunak for granting them the opportunity for Boris to come around their constituencies and, of course, remind them of what an absolute shambolic and a liar he was to their communities. Excellent strategy there, Rishi. But gets even more funnier, because recently a watchdog looked at the findings of the government and of course has seen these examples, these posters to say, leveling up is here. They've actually turned around and gone, oh, actually, there's no compelling examples of what leveling up has delivered. So let's talk more about this, shall we? So with that, as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help support the channel. Like I say, down below, links to the Patreon page, the one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course the Pony Club down below as well. Check those out all down below in the doobly-doo. And of course, as always, thank you very much to all the people who do help and support the channel. Even if you do just click the like and share button, it all helps. So, as always, let's crack on directly into this. This comes from The Guardian with the title of "No Compelling Examples of What Leveling Up Has Delivered, Watchdog Finds." So, Rishi Sunak's leveling up agenda is beset by an absolutely astonishing level of delay, and the government cannot give any compelling examples of what it has delivered. Parliamentary spending watchdog has found. Shock, horror. This all goes back to the leveling up white paper. You may remember that. That was unbelievable, because the first two chapters, the first two chapters of it were like, this is leveling up, this is what it should be doing, this is the type of projects we need, this is the amount of money we need. Unbelievable that they were admitting to this massive failure that they have, failed to do, and, maybe absolutely, do. But of course, what happens? You then get to the funding sector. Who's in charge of the Treasury at that time when the report was commissioned? Well, it was Rishi Sunak. Just basically slashing not even giving the required amount of money that was needed of what the white paper had said in the previous 2 chapters was required in order to achieve leveling up. Anyway, back to it. So the Public Accounts Committee had said it barely found any of the 71, quote, shovel-ready products or projects due to be completed this month were even on track. Dame Meg Hillier, the chairman of the committee, said the levels of delay that our report finds in one of the government's flagship policy platforms is absolutely astonishing. The vast majority of levelling up projects that were so successful in early rounds of funding are now being delivered late, with further funding delays likely now baked in. And I think there's a lot of these, I think, are traps for Labour, done so deliberately. I really do think that to me reeks of we're going to do something just to cause trouble for Labour. Then we can say, oh, but we funded all these levelling. Well, no, you didn't. You undercut the funding. You delayed the funding. You didn't want to deliver on these projects. Anyway, the report also found, the report found that only a tenth of the £10.5 billion of promised funds had been spent by councils, just over a third of the £3.7 billion that had been handed out by Michael Gove's Levelling Up department by December. Hillier said that Gove's department appeared to have been, quote, blinded by optimism, as its finding of the projects were, quote, clearly anything but shovel-ready, at the expense of projects that could have made a real difference. And that, I think, is the most damning thing about this. That councils were forced to compete for this funding where there was clearly a need to be done. And instead, these projects were cherry-picked by the Department of Levelling Up, by Michael Gove, by even Rishi Sunak in some of these cases, probably wouldn't surprise me, that could have been built quickly, and then they could have said, oh, see, levelling up done. But then projects that, as it said, could have made a real difference were ignored, were not funded. That is the legacy of levelling up. And you think sending Boris Johnson round up north in these red wall seats is a good idea? we'll see how that goes if that happens. We'll see how that goes. But I think, lead balloon is a phrase going to be bandied around a lot. Anyway, continues. She said that MPs were concerned and surprised given the generational ambition of this agenda, and there appeared to be no plan to evaluate the success long term. Yeah, let's just have no plan. So we're going to do all this, and then there's going to be no plan to actually evaluate if this project had been a success. Because we don't even want to look back at it. We just want to say, oh, well, we did all this for levelling up. Was it a success? Don't know. Could have been. Anyway, Boris Johnson made levelling up the guiding principle of his premiership after winning the 2019 general election on a promise to improve the lives of voters in these left-behind parts of the UK. But the project has now floundered under his 2 number 10 successors. It was floundering under him as well. Let's be really honest about that. It was not just floundering under his successors. It was floundering very much so under him. And has been now further derided by by surging inflation and a crisis in local authority funding. The Conservatives had hoped to go into the next general election able to point to levelling up in action, but the Public Accounts Committee report has said that the government had now been unable to provide any compelling examples today. Gee, I wonder if the Public Accounts Committee is going to become also public enemy number one, just like, the OBR that they're desperate to now get rid of. Anyway, the cross-party committee of MPs said that they had asked for over 3 examples of projects that have been delivered that had delivered change. One of the examples given by Gove's team was the extension of a tram line in the West Midlands. Another was given some money to a college in Northumberland. Oh, well, I'm glad you extended the tram line. Don't get me wrong. Extending these types of things is important. I think more cities need to have, I think, trams. And I think tram lines in places like Sheffield, which have proven to be really, really successful, should be extended. As I've always brought the example of Supertram. Everyone went into building of Supertram like it was going to be amazing, fantastic. It was going to be really good for the city, and it was. It's proven its case time and time again. But when they started building it, people went, I don't know. And then, of course, the plans got scaled back because of the pushback against the building of these trams and the problems and the roads and the traffic delays it was causing at the time. Now, people love Supertram. People say, well, why didn't the trams go all the way to Rotherham, even into Barnsley in some cases, and of course to other communities out and around Sheffield? That was the original plan. It's because of those initial pushbacks against that. But there you go. Anyway, I'm going to go on a Supertram rant if I'm careful. And of course, I like this. Another was just some money given to a college in Northumberland. So you just gave some money to a college in Northumberland. I'm sure that college in Northumberland does appreciate that money, but what about the long-term prospects of what was done with that money in that college? What did it do to deliver a proper change? I laugh, but this is just unfortunately the current level of our government. But there you go. Anyway, the Public Accounts Committee report said, we feel the examples the department have given us were, while important to their localities, are relatively of small scale compared to the substantial, convincing examples we would have expected the department to have had readily available at this stage. And it's not surprising because, well, inflation and, of course, lack of funding even initially for these things. And, of course, I think probably very, very much trying to cherry pick things. I think we will probably find out that these places that were picked were done so because of the speed that these projects could have been done with, rather than, shall we say, the long-term benefits that could have been provided in maybe projects that would have taken longer to build or had substantial long-term funding maybe required to them. Would not be surprised to find that out at a later date. So, it found of the over 71 projects granted the funding in this first round of bids had been due to spend money by the end of this month, but at least 60 had been delayed into the next financial year. The report also found, we found this astonishing given round 1 of this levelling up funding was awarded to, quote, shovel-ready projects that were supposed to be completed and delivered for local people by March of 2024. The MPs also criticised Gove's department for changing the rules for applying his levelling up funds partway through the bidding process, meaning that councils wasted scarce public funds. Something else that should be highly brought up. Councils did have to spend money just to bring in resources to get this levelling up money. That should not have happened. That should never have happened. The EU was entirely capable of giving money to projects and funding this stuff without that need. But, it's only, the EU can do this very, very simply through its own institutions, but we couldn't even do that or just replicate that. And I highly think there was a lot of politicking going on in the background because of that. And I think the areas that are chosen, I think, probably more than suit that. So back to it. So they also found that 55 councils had spent on an average over £30,000 bidding for the funds. So they had to spend an average that I don't even know what to say in response to that. So they had to spend on average over £30,000 bidding for the funds that they could not win because of the government rule changes, squandering roughly £1.6 million. What can I say? Anyway, Angela Rayner, Labour's MP Shadow for Levelling Up Secretary, had said, the Conservatives have utterly abandoned any pretense of trying to achieve their mission of levelling up Britain. That was abandoned long ago, very much so under Boris Johnson. This report confirms the Tories' begging bowl approach to funding bids has wasted scarce funding public resources, forcing local authorities to spend precious time, effort, and funds to bid for pots of money, many of which they had no chance of getting. Labour will start by ending this sticking plaster approach by approach peddled by the Conservatives and provide long-term funding settlements to local leaders to try and give them greater certainty about their ability to plan for the long term. That is something that is good. Just that approach alone, being able to structure it in such a way that these people can go long term, is going to make such a just that alone is going to be just a fundamental difference. And I cannot stress how good that is. Henry Mewson, the chief executive of George Osborne's Northern Powerhouse Partnership, said, when this fund was first announced, we raised concerns that the Treasury's idea for the bidding process would be unnecessary, costly, and time-consuming. This has proven to be the case and exposed local authorities to now higher inflation, and particularly in construction, which has driven up the costs for these projects. A spokesperson for the Department of Levelling Up said, we are proud that we've committed over $15 billion since 2019 to the often overlooked areas, agreeing historic devolution deals and shifting power and money out of Westminster. This money is regenerating town centres, creating new infrastructure, and helping to level up communities across the UK. Well, not according to this report. But they said buildings do not go up overnight. These are multi-year programs, so it would be expected that the capital spend ramps up in later years. But we will continue to give expert support to councils to tackle any delivery blockers, so we can deliver these vital projects quickly. One of the ideas that was put forward by George Osborne back during the Northern Powerhouse era was bond investments, that there should be the creation of a leveling up, or at least a power, what was called at the time, I believe, a powerhouse bond, so that companies could invest in these like bonds, and then that money could then be spent on like the Northern Powerhouse and things like that you could invest in Britain's future. That would be something that people could do and invest in. And did that happen? No. Of course, that was abandoned long ago. Of course, when the Northern Powerhouse decided, when Cameron decided, or well, shall we say, the Conservatives decided, no, we're not really going to invest in the Northern Powerhouse. But again, there are so many things that could have been done about this to secure funding, and yet you've seen, as was put there, 1.6 million pounds wasted by councils just to try and get money they knew in some cases they weren't going to win. Leveling up, what a success. But again, as we've been talking about since day one, it wasn't going to happen. And what's happened? Oh, we were proved incredibly right. And I'll tell you what, I would not be shocked. I would not be shocked by a Red Wall rebellion. At this late stage, would not shock me. But hey, we'll wait and see if that does come to fruition. I doubt it, but there you go. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, leave your examples of leveling up down in the comments. But of course, as always, you can always level up yourselves by joining the Pony Club. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.